Hello guys and welcome back to this new episode. Today we are going to talk about Vikings and we're going to deliver some curious facts about the Vikings. So let's start. First and foremost, in terms of background, it's important to know that Vikings assaulted around 9th and 8th century, right? And they were coming from Scandinavian countries, so Norway, Sweden, but also Denmark and also Iceland. And they got for themselves this reputation of being very, very violent. Were they actually that violent? Sometimes they were. Some other times they were not, right? Basically, their reputation, their fame, derives directly from their conquests and their explorations, right? So naturally, when you go out in the world and explore, since they arrived to Baghdad and in the US, when you push yourself that far out, you have to be aggressive because you're going to encounter enemies. And that's pretty much what happened. So they were known as wasps. They would assault and burn and kill and destroy everything, right? And certainly, they were ferocious, and it's enough for us to think about 1845. That is the time when they actually entered in Paris and looted Paris. But the same thing, the same looting happened to many other cities that were French, English, and also German. So let's go more into curiosities about the Vikings. So number one is that the term Vikings would appear to come from Vik or Vik. I am not sure about the pronunciation. It's a Scandinavian, spelled V-I-K, which simply means bay, right? Like people that were residing around bays. Now, they were, generally speaking, very calm, very tranquil populations when in their territories. They were very well known for some facts. First of all, they were apparently extremely clean. There is no one else, except for the Bible. There is no one else in terms of populations that is as clean as the Vikings, which should tell us something. So anyway, extremely clean. They also were traders, goldsmiths, just simply shepherds, dedicated themselves in part to agriculture, and they were excellent poets. Poetry was called by them beverage of gnomes. What that means? I'm not really sure. Being that this comes from Iceland, it is possible that, they had already the tradition, the mythological tradition that you still have nowadays, as in like elves, gnomes, and other fantastic creatures. Which, don't get me wrong, they do exist, all of that, but we just like to pretend they don't. Anyway. Alright, so that. Now, they were excellent poets, which I did not expect that from the Vikings, to be honest, but okay. So there's that. They also built ships, warships, that were known with the term drakkar. A drakkar was a ship that was very agile, pretty much not heavy, so very light. The hull was not deep. But that also caused several issues, right? Because when you were on a drakkar, you only had the deck to be in to stay, right? So all the cooking was happening in the deck. So think about, there's a storm and you cannot cook. There's a storm and there are like 7 men that row and 6 that try to eliminate water that has come in, in order for the ship not to sink. So I think, it's important to have this agile ships, because you could literally get to the shore whereas you cannot really do that with a more heavy ship, and you have to anchor somewhere else the ship, like way more um, um, in the ocean when the water is not so shallow. But I don't know if it was really that convenient. And then you would need a bridge that goes from the deck of your ship to the deck of the other ship. And they would use like shields, and these shields were just on the edge so that they could recognize their own ships, and they could recognize among themselves and recognize also the enemy. They also did not wear uniforms. They were usually wearing something that is made of leather, and underneath that there would be like an iron chainmail to protect themselves. But basically the way they would dress and appear was pretty much left to themselves. It's interesting because they had like axe, a spear, 3 meters long, and also several swords. And the other thing that is particularly interesting here is that there was an elite in terms of military group. There was an elite known as Basicia, and they had no hierarchy. So among them, everyone was pretty much equal. There was no ranking. And they were very well known for being, number A, extremely ferocious. Number B, has been an hypothesis circulating out there that they were using wine, but also maybe some of the drug, in order to kind of like charge themselves for the battle, right? Those were men that in whatever temperature, they would go out there pretty much like, not naked, but like semi-naked. They would go like with very little clothing, fighting, known to be this ferocious, right? Which, you know, if you think of winter, you go like, I want to have a blanket, something like that, right? So Basicia was the elite group, but every man, women would not necessarily fight, but every man became, after the age of 12, part of the military if possible. Meaning, basically there was a training, and then once you would win different competitions among other people, against other people, then you would become part of the military. Vikings also are very well known for being very clean, as we said. They were welcomes, apparently, and extremely clean. When somebody was wounded, right, you would have, if wounded, for instance, at the belly, you would cure, or they would cure him with an onion soup. And if given the onion soup, the smell of onion was basically trespassing into from the stomach in terms of odor, was coming out as an odor from the stomach, then you would know that that person would quickly die. But if not, they would go ahead and proceed with curing him with herbs and runic. They had like runic symbols tattooed on the skin. I was saying extremely clean. That was, you know, like how they cure people, that was a part of it. But also, they were very renowned for having saunas at least once a week, so much so that the English thought, this Viking's a little too much clean. And having regular baths. And they were also very well known for removing superfluous hair with tweezers and clean their ears with some metal stick. So, you know, they were pretty high on hygiene. So there's that. But another different curiosity concerns women. Women who would wear loose hair, meaning not tie, were single, whereas women that were already engaged in a relationship, they would braid their hair. women would also wear makeup, especially for the eyes, though that has also been seen on men. We have some reports that some Viking men also would use some makeup for the eye. So we do know that about women. We know that they were the matriarchs of that society, basically. They were pretty much free, allowed several things and several activities. The only thing that they couldn't do really was to go on a drug car. They would go on a drug car exclusively when it was about colonizing a new land. Otherwise, that was the only activity that they could not do. Now, it is true that a Viking was having like a first wife and then a bunch of concubines, right? However, the woman had the right to file for a divorce and to ask for a divorce and to also obtain, part of the properties of the husband. So in general, historians tend to think that women in that society were pretty free and they were recognized some rights. If we're talking about the same period of time in different other parts of the world, we do not see that happening that often. And finally, two important points. So our point number 10 would be about the gods that they adored and worshipped. So those gods, those divinities had a lot of flaws, which is kind of like the Greeks, like the ancient Greeks, right? But very almost funny it looks like to me. We had Hodinus, right, who was portrayed without an eye, and it said the eye fell out because of his infinite wisdom. Never heard that before, but it looks interesting. Considering also that, we have the evil eye. We have like the eye that it's a Turkish tradition to protect yourself against people's evil eyes. That's interesting that he fell off because of infinite wisdom. And then Tyr, that was the god of justice, that was with no end, like he would have like one hand but then missing another hand, which I don't know what that is, what would that represent. And then Freya, and she was the goddess of beauty, and she would be portrayed as a woman very much dedicated to sex. So that looked interesting to me. And then curiosity number 12, which is the last one I have, has to do with the concept of democracy. There are two countries that contend that record. One is Norway. In Lotgun, Norway, we have historical records that show us the reunion of 485 delegates from 12 tribes, and this reunion was called Thing, exactly like we know now, Thing, right? Which is kind of funny because the word republic, for instance, is republic, and it contains the word thing because it's the public thing. So anyway, in 930 AD, democracy was also present in Iceland. There is a reunion that is around the year 1000, which is a democratic reunion on establishing which god they should keep. And eventually it comes out that the only god, the true god, is the god of Christians, and so they abolished the other gods. Finally, one last word that I do want to mention is that there is in Sweden a monument that is like a 67 meter long. It's more like Stonehenge, but they're not in circle. They are kind of like in a sort of semicircle, and that is a funerary monument where you have like pieces of rocks huge pieces of rocks. They're lined up, and then they kind of like swerve and go around for a little bit, and that is a funerary monument where the notables, the distinguished member of that society, would be buried, you know, and those monuments were there to remember them and somewhat integrate their memory in the constitution of the society of Vikings at the time. That's it, guys. So I'd like to know if this video was fun and if you have enjoyed it. So don't forget to comment below. And if you have liked the video, don't forget to like it and subscribe and hit the notification bell if you want to receive every new update. We'll talk next time. Bye!